I'm in the process of sponsoring a family that is fleeing South Africa due to the white. I am not going to let a white group of people suffer and not help them because I've been bullied into not giving a. That ain't me. Wrong dude. Don't care. These people want to be Americans. They don't want to be South Africans anymore because that country was given over the minute that communist Mandela was let out of prison. They're going to live in my house, and I'm going to feed them and take care of them.
Suffice to say that I got involved in the abuse of the minority white race in South Africa a couple of years ago. Got heavily involved. Ultimately ended up sponsoring a family of 4 and helped facilitate them from Africa. And obviously, it turned out bad. They did play me, and they admit. In fact, that was one of the things they said was they're bragging about how they played me like a sport game. I spent over $30,000 in that 11 months in money and fed and clothed them. So I might be stupid enough to have fallen for that because I thought with my heart instead of my head. You know what? They cost me a lot of money when they were here, suck and parasite and use people, and then when they're done, they just, go on to the next victim. When they talk to me, it's like, hey, we're a good family, we own a business, and we're hardworking people, and, when we get to America, the way we'll pay the rent we'll work for you guys, all right? If anything, we had to work 10 times as hard just to care of these people. I mean, in 11 months, I got my grass cut 3 times. One time ended up being in a huge argument. Everything free. Lay around, watch TV, and watch movies for 11 months, and chain smoke cigarettes, and don't do a guy.
Secondly, Caroline, the president has shown support for South African refugees that are coming to the United States next week. Can you talk about what these refugees are fleeing and why this is a priority for the administration?
Well, the president has actually signed an executive order on that matter. My office can get it back to you, Michael. But this group in South Africa has faced racial persecution. In fact, the government there has vowed to take away their farmland that they own. And so the president has talked significantly about this. As for further details on refugee claims and asylum claims, I would defer you to the State Department.
Just one minute. See, what specific evidence do the United States have that those South Africans have been severely persecuted, that they need help from
It's state policy. There's land expropriation. There's a whole series of government laws and policies that specifically target white farmers and the white population in South Africa. That's well documented on video. And of course, you even see government leaders chanting racial epithets and espousing racial violence. So it's all very well documented.
The rationale behind it when the refugees have not been taken back from other countries, why is the U.S. taking the news from South Africa?
Well, because what's happening in South Africa fits the textbook definition of why the refugee program was created. This is persecution based on a protected characteristic, in this case, race. This is race-based persecution. The refugee program is not intended as a solution for global poverty, and historically it has been used that way. Wherever there's global poverty or wherever there's dysfunctional governments, then the U.S. refugee program comes in, swoops people up, relocates them to America, and you have multi-generational problems. Even into the second and third generation, you have endemic poverty, you have crime issues, you have integration issues. The U.S. refugee program in America has been a catastrophic failure. I mean, if you look, for example, at the Twin Cities area, I mean, just in terms of markers of educational outcomes, in terms of public safety, in terms of welfare use, I mean, it's been a complete public policy failure. And so this is an example of the president returning the refugee program to what it was intended to be used as.
Mr. Miller,
what specific...
This is Donald Trump's response to South Africa's expropriation law. The US president essentially offering safe haven to white South Africans who he says are being racially discriminated against by South Africa. Now, we're told, according to the New York Times, who's been looking into this and has seen documents related to the plan, we should see the first arrivals here to the United States next week, potentially as early as Monday. And we're told that they'll be arriving into Dulles Airport in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. The likelihood is that the Trump administration will want to create some fanfare around this, essentially viewing it as a celebration of offering that safe haven to the white South Africans. But bear in mind that this resettlement program for refugees has essentially been shuttered to multiple countries. What we've seen instead is really a fast-tracking of white South Africans through this programme, even though the resettlement programme remains suspended, for example, to Congolese refugees who've fled conflict. And that is normally what this resettlement programme would be all about, for people who have fled wars, who've been involved in natural disasters, the United States opening their doors to people like that. But what it is the latest blow to US-South Africa relations. Donald Trump has been angered by South Africa's decision to support the Palestinian people in the conflict in Gaza, its decision to take Israel to the International Criminal Court over claims of genocide against the Palestinian people. And in recent months here in Washington, D.C., we've seen South Africa's ambassador to the United States being designated persona non grata and expelled from the country. Already rocky relations between the two countries, unlikely to get any better with this offer from the United States. What is unclear is exactly how many South Africans will be arriving in the United States next week, but we do know that around 100 were deemed eligible for a potential refuge.
And also our engagement in Bali with the State Department, seeking clarity as to how this process is expected to unfold. This is what State is saying to us. The U.S. Embassy in Pretoria has been conducting interviews and processing potential refugees pursuant to President Trump's executive order. We continue to review inquiries from individuals who have expressed an interest to the embassy to resettle in the United States. We are unable to provide or comment on individual cases. The Department of State is prioritizing consideration for U.S. refugee resettlement of Afrikaners in South Africa who are, quote, victims of unjust racial discrimination, echoing sentiments first expressed by Donald Trump, President Trump, in that executive order. But again, Mbali, to take a step back here, refugee admissions into the United States takes many, many months, sometimes years. The vetting is extremely rigorous. So the questions we have is, what process was really followed here, given just how expedited this process seems to be, in that the first 54 are now expected in Washington, D.C. At some point next week.
And, Sharon, what at all do we know about these refugee candidates and, the vetting that was done in that way? Also, at the same time, when it comes to the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria and the criteria that was also used, how will they be assisted in their resettlement in the U.S.?
Well, we don't really know, right, exactly who is being welcomed, who has been welcomed for these interviews at the South African Embassy in Pretoria. But what we do know is that they're Afrikaners in the main and white in particular. That is essentially what the executive order determined in terms of who would be eligible for resettlement in the United States. I have been contacting my sources here in the United States, who did not want to go on the record and spoke to me on background. They did not want to be persecuted, but this is what one source said to me, quote, "There has been no criteria or procedure for adjudication of refugee applications. I have no idea how this has been done." So a concern there from a stakeholder in the United States who has been monitoring this process very closely. They don't have the answers as to the criteria for the adjudication that has been implemented in this very expedited process. But what we are also learning in Bali from reportage here in the United States is that this first group that arrives next week will be processed in Washington, D.C., and then sent to various states around the United States. This is a very vast country. They will not be moving as a group. They will be separated depending on, your family, I imagine, will stay with you, right? But they will go to a number of states. We're told the states of West Virginia, Colorado, Massachusetts, California, Idaho, Montana, North Carolina, Nevada, New York, Minnesota, and Michigan, and Washington State are among the states that have already indicated that they're willing to receive these Afrikaner refugees. But this is a process that will be unfolding. The New York Times also tells us from a memo that they saw from the Department of Health and Human Services that they will be helping South Africans with housing, basic home furnishings, essential household items, groceries, weather-appropriate clothing, right? It gets very cold in the United States, more so than it does even in the coldest parts of South Africa. Diapers, formula, hygiene products, and prepaid phones. So this is a process that will take some time, one imagines, but certainly it seems to be moving very, very fast as it pertains to the white Afrikaners from South Africa.
Sharon, briefly, before I let you go, I mean, do we know if any information has been given when it comes to a South African delegation that's being sent to the United States, of course, for those bilateral talks?
We have not had any confirmation as to direct negotiations between the South African team and the United States, but we have received some positive indications, right? You'll remember that DG of the Department of International Relations, Zane Dangle, was in the United States recently. He held talks in terms of his role as the G20 envoy with his counterparts in the United States. We also then understand, based on what President Ramaphosa said alongside Volodymyr Zelensky during that visit to Pretoria recently, that he had engaged with President Trump. And just to reflect the tweet that the president issued at that time, he said, President Trump and I agreed to meet soon to address the war in Ukraine and various matters regarding relations between South Africa and the United States. We both spoke about the need to foster good relations between the two countries. Then you get this a call between the Deputy Minister Boertes and his counterpart in the United States, a very hard-hitting statement from South Africa, essentially again rejecting the premise that the United States has based this expedited refugee program on. So there are still tensions here. It is a bilateral relationship, a strategic relationship that has not yet found its footing in the aftermath of the executive order, but certainly contacts have been happening at the highest level. We now need to hear from Durko and from the presidency as to when, President Ramaphosa, as he has stated, will meet with Donald Trump to really ventilate these issues and the differences that exist between Washington and Pretoria at this time.
All right.
Well, there you got it, guys. I love the fact that Trump wanted to make sure to repeat himself about 2 or 3 times about not really caring who the individual is, but yet making sure to let you know that, hey, the people that we're bringing over, they're white, they're farmers, they own land, I'm not really trying to make this about race, but I'm going to make it about race and let you know the race of the people and specifically why it is that they're being brought directly over. It was hilarious. Like I said before, I don't know where in the world these African Americans are going to be at this moment. And again, if anybody's confused on why it is that I'm saying that they're African Americans, because they are. These are people born and raised in Africa, right? It could be just main part of Africa or South Africa, Africa in general. And they're coming over to America and they have fast track citizenship. This makes them African American. These people are not American. They are African American. Americans are born in America. Africans are born in Africa, right? So we got that. Europeans are born in Europe. Australians are born in Australia, right? So if you ask somebody that was Australian, they'll be Australian American. I'm just saying, European American, right? Chinese American, so on and so on and so on. So I'm just making sure that we get this very clear, just in case I have somebody running in the comment section trying to tell me that, oh no, they're not African. No, they are African Americans. Elon Musk, I've been saying this for several months now. Elon Musk is an African American. You might not like it. It might be a little bit jarring for people to sit up there and hear, but yes, Elon Musk is an African American. He comes directly from Africa. And regardless of him still land or not, comes directly from Africa, him and his family, and he came directly to America, making him an African American. This is why it's very important for brandings to be very specific to a culture and or a group, because realistically at this moment in time, Black Americans have gone through numerous amounts of brandings and changes. And while Black Americans have gone through these numerous names, brandings, and changes, there has somewhat, oddly enough, always been somebody else that will come in that the United States government would decide to automatically call them or brand them as such. Right? Now, at one point in time, Black people in America would be known as color folks, right? Persons of color, whatever you want to sit up there and consider it and call it, right? Now, that has been brought into everybody else, not just Black people. At one moment in time, Black people were the main ones called African Americans. Now we've had over the 20 plus or whatever decades, we didn't had a surplus of Africans come directly over here. So now that branding, in a sense, goes directly to them, right? And now, since we've had a new surge of African Americans, that branding also goes to them as well. See how that works? So now we're in this little mode where it's like, all right, we have this, you know, Black American or whatever it is other people want to set up in their state. How long before something else takes place and happens to displace, right, Black Americans from being able to use the terminology, moniker, name, branding, whatever you want to call it, as Black Americans? How long before that happens? Because you're watching it in real time as Africans from Africa are coming directly over here to become American citizens, therefore making them African Americans. And the main thing that people have stated is like, yo, you know, African Americans deserve to have reparations when it deals with slavery. So now, how would you want to go about, in a sense, say and do that if you don't have everybody on the same page? And I'm talking about the government, right? Because the government, they like to play semantics. They like to play with words and names and all these other types of things. And this is when you've had other people talk about, hey, we need to do things lineage based. Right. And I have no problem with that. I have no issue. Right. But on the whole other side note, dealing with this situation here where you have these brand new African, South African / African Americans coming directly over here, you have the United States that's going to afford them certain things. Right. So everybody else got cut directly out from citizenship pretty much. And they also just recently stated by way of Trump that, hey, if you decide that you want to get married to an American citizen, that no longer automatically entitles you to have or to become American because you're married to an American citizen. No longer does it give you that eligibility or, you know, that type of right. The main thing that I try to tell a lot of people, I'm like, hey, if you happen to vote for a certain type of way, you're going to end up cutting yourself out of a lot of things. You're going to end up doing more harm to yourself than actual good, right? People didn't want to believe it. Black Americans tried to warn and tell a lot of other people, and people didn't want to sit up there and listen. But also, a lot of their own people decided to cut off their nose to spite their face, right? And the main thing I try to get through to a lot of white Americans is the fact that, hey, if you decide to go this route, I just want you to know and understand that this administration and the government is going to show you how much they care for other people versus actually caring for you. Like, they're making sure to bring everybody else over. They're making sure to give all of these people all the stuff that they need, all the amenities. They're going to get the free food, the housing, all of these things. The things that ordinary Americans have to sit up there and strive and fight for, that they pay their tax dollars directly to the government so that if they fall on the hard times, they can get these things. But I've been idly sitting by and just watching white people just look at everybody else get afforded a lot of things. But at the same time, I'm reading stories on how it is that white families are suffering, how white families are having to go to shelters, and how it is that they have to beg and plead to try to get any ounce or iota of money that they need in order to survive month to month or whatever it is. I see them struggling, but yet I see other people who are not American whites coming directly over here, and they're getting afforded all of the things that you longed for, all of the things that you begged and asked your government for. I see all of them getting those things afforded to them while you're just sitting there. And the craziest part is, at the end of the day, somehow, someway, the conversation is going to go from that fact on how it is that the government does not actually care about them, how the government has actually tricked them, how the government has actually used them, and they're going to turn around and be like, oh, the blacks. That's the craziest part. Out of everything that they can literally see that is factual happen in front of them in 4K at this moment in time, in front of their own two eyes, they're still going to revert back to factory default settings of racism and still want to run around and talk about black people as if we're the ones causing all of this to happen, as if we're the ones that enabled all of this to happen. Crazy word, diabolical in nature, but it is what it is. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about this video and everything, or anything that I stated directly in this video. in the comment description below. And as always, peace, love, and stay tuned for the next video.